Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with part 2 of my tour here at the National Arboretum. Obviously timed it for the magical display of magnolias. And in their magnolia collection, they also have a notable holly collection. And that's what all of the evergreens are that you're seeing in the backdrop. Now, of course, we're dazzled by the flowers, so we're not gonna make a holly tour, but I do want to encourage you to come here and visit. I'm so overstimulated, I can't even explain myself. There's so much to see, there's so much diversity. And when you're here, you really start to get an idea of the importance, not only of this collection, but of the research that has been done since the inception of the National Arboretum in 1927. Plant breeding, bringing in new species to help diversify American landscapes, breeding for floriferous habits, for disease resistance, for insect tolerance. Really, the list goes on and on. It's one of the most important institutions that we have in the horticulture industry, and most people have never been here. So I really want to encourage you, if you come to visit DC, make a stop at the National Arboretum. It's free admission, and I want to encourage you also to support them by being a part of the Friends of the National Arboretum, which is their fundraising leg and really the way that they connect to the community. I'm going to put a link in the description so that you can learn more, and I do hope that you are going to enjoy today's video. So we've been looking at beautiful magnolias around town, and the bright white ones with sort of thin petals, that's Magnolia stellata, the star magnolia. So this is Magnolia stellata rubra, the pink flowering star magnolia, and it's just absolutely spectacular. Again, I think that magnolias do exceptionally well here in the mid-Atlantic region, where your temperature fluctuations aren't quite as severe as what we have in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. Many times our stellatas bloom in January, and then we get really cold again and all the flower buds fall off. But here in DC, where you have a more steady, constant cold, and it is much colder in DC than it is in Raleigh, Flora can affirm this, it's a more reliable spring flowering habit, which is something to enjoy. Well, here, next to rubra, we've got Magnolia stellata rosea, and it's full, spectacular flower. You stay next to it. I want the full spectrum here. But now, Flora just taught me something that I didn't know. So share with YouTube.
I said, are these edible? Do they taste like ginger? And Bree said, I'm not sure. And I said, I am. They taste just like ginger.
And it's really tasty. And the fragrance, you guys, I so wish smell-o-vision existed. The fragrance from this is so amazing. And this is a very old plant. When I was coming in to try and find the label, which of course was very easily located, just want to show you how big the caliper is. And then look at these branches are basically completely hollow. And so I bet this probably had some dieback back in the early 80s when temperatures got really, really cold here. And that was actually when a lot of the cold hardy camellia breeding occurred, was in 82 and 85, when they got to I think -6 for over a week, stayed below freezing for more than a week. And here we have the spectacular Magnolia denutata Yulon. And now I don't think I can live a happy life without getting one of these for my yard. Branch, you would want this juvenility growth where they cut a branch off and then you're getting 3 pieces. That's where your best rooting comes from, is juvenile. So a lot of times if someone's having a difficult time getting a plant propagated, the recommendation is cut an entire big mature trunk off and let it reflush, and that's what you can reproduce. Because there's a lot of lack of vigor to get something started on wood that's, 50 or more years old. So we commonly call these tulip magnolias, which is sort of a generic name, and they're predominantly interspecific hybrids. This is Galaxy with nice dark pink flowers. Behind us is Wada's Memory, which is obviously a beautiful, elegant, large flowering white form. And nice upright habit. You see these everywhere. These were sort of standard plants, really, I think maybe starting in the 60s. I know I grew up with these planted in my gardens in Michigan. These are really well adapted. I think they're hardy, maybe zones 3 to 8. They're less common in the South because they do need a little cold chill in order to stimulate this kind of flowering habit. So you don't really see these as commonly, say, down in the Gulf Coast. And even Raleigh, we're pushing it, again, because of our temperature fluctuations. But really from DC north, these are such reliable, fantastic spring flowering trees.
Perfectly petite.
So this is a super cute hybrid, obviously dwarf. And, one way you can distinguish a dwarf from a non is just how big the internodes are. You see how tight that space between nodes, which is really where leaves come out. That is called an internode, and you see that that's just, a half an inch? And that's what contributes to this being this nice dwarf tight growing habit. I really love this. I'm not familiar with this variety. I've never grown it before. Not really in the nursery industry right now, but maybe one day I will be, and I'll make sure I get this into production. And yesterday when Flora and I were driving around, I was like, okay, that's Magnolia stellata, that's Magnolia solangiana. And here we're in the depths of the National Arboretum introductions of solangiana hybrids. I don't know what all the other species mixed with solangiana are. I think Beyondii is a species that was kind of commonly introduced. And this one is Verbanica, another introduction I'm not familiar with. What we have here, this is another Verbanica. So really large trunk, beautiful branching structure, a large tree. Also known as the saucer magnolia. This might not be the size for a new neighborhood. Like, our houses are too close to each other to have trees that have this kind of broad growing habit. But great for an arboretum. As you can see, there are so many individual plants here. And I don't know how long this video is already. So I'll probably break this up into a couple different bits and pieces. But the magnolia that certainly everybody in the South is accustomed to is here, Magnolia grandiflora. This is our great native broadleaf evergreen form that tends to flower in the summertime, usually May, June, into the month of July. You see what a stark contrast that is, being evergreen compared to the deciduous magnolia category. You really notice these flowers because there's no leaves competing. And I hope that this video will do it justice. It never quite does. I really encourage you to come and visit the National Arboretum. It's an amazing collection. It's certainly of incredible botanical value. And I think it's something that everyone in America should take advantage of. And so just to show you some of the hollies that are in here, hollies are such an important plant in American landscapes. And obviously big broadleaf evergreens, they're getting ready to start flowering now, and they actually are really an important plant for pollinators. If you ever wondered how hollies get berries, it's because of the pollinators visiting the flowers. And most people don't think that hollies bloom, but they do. You can see these are dormant flowers that will probably be open in the next couple of weeks. And again, the diversity in this collection really is second to none. And Flora's found a spectacular white flowering magnolia.
Called Iufer.
Iufer. Yeah. That I am not familiar with, but it certainly is beautiful. I think the main takeaway from visiting here is how few varieties end up in the marketplace for home gardeners to have access to. Because I've been in the business 25 years and I don't know a lot of these hybrids. That means normal people going to regular garden centers would have absolutely no knowledge or accessibility.
I'm blown away with the variety of what counts as a magnolia. I've never seen one that looked like this. In my mind, they look like the Magnolia grandiflora in the south. So seeing these beautiful flowers so early on is a nice way to welcome spring.
We were just having a discussion. You see the sort of the water sprouts, the green branches there. And then I was looking and I think this is grafted. It has a low graft and you can see the distinction in the color of the bark. And so I don't know whether this hybrid just doesn't root well or if it doesn't have good vigor. Generally, grafting isn't the best decision because if you don't manage that understock, it will overwhelm and overtake the desired plant that you're trying to grow. So we just came over here and I'm going to show you, this one's not really broken dormancy yet. So it doesn't look like much, but it's a spectacular specimen. This is Magnolia liliflora, which is a different species, Cultivar Niagara. And I used to grow the species liliflora, and its advantage is it's later blooming, so it misses frost. So this is actually a species that we would recommend in North Carolina because its tendency isn't to break dormancy until later in the season. Some of these other species break dormancy just because of warm weather in January, and that's what leads to them flowering too early and getting frosted. So here we are just in this amazing open field. We've got magnolias, we've got cherries, we've got hollies. It's like everything that makes the world beautiful, except that it's like 42 degrees and raining. And I think that is the absolute coldest weather that you can exist in. But I want everybody on YouTube to get to see the beauty regardless of the bad weather. So here is Leonard Messel, a Lobneri, Magnolia Lobneri hybrid. This is one that I'm very familiar with. I used to grow it. It grew very well from cuttings. It's a big tree, very big tree. This, by judging, looks like a stellata. Nice and small. What does it say?
It's a Magnolia stellata Kikuzaki.
All right, so a cultivar of stellata that I'm sure was selected for this dome-like habit. You can see this one's about finished. It's got some brown edging that might be frost-kissed. But, you know, again, when you're thinking about the size of your garden, do you have room for something like that? Or do you have room for something like that? And therein lies the power of cultivars. Not only is it different flower color, but a very different ultimate size. I really can't believe how vast the Magnolia collection is. I think this might be my first time coming here during Magnolia season. I was last here in December and got to see all of the cold hardy camellias. But I definitely did not know that the Magnolia collection was so vast. Here we've got Magnolia cobus, just a straight species Magnolia cobus. And this is often used in hybridizing. Again, I am not a Magnolia expert by any measure, but I have some very dear friends. Andrew Bunting, who I mentioned, wrote the book on magnolias. Kevin Paris, who is an amazing Magnolia hybridizer, and Greg Page, all of whom are active in the Magnolia Society. And I'd love for them to be here with me so they could actually be giving me more relevant information to share with you all. But I can definitely understand why people are smitten with magnolias. Hello everybody. I hope that you will tune in for part 3 of my tour here from the National Arboretum on what may be the worst weather day of the entire month of March. But we're powering through because, doggone it, I think everybody needs to see, and I'm hoping these videos will inspire you to actually come out and see the gardens on a nicer day. So I hope you'll tune in tomorrow, and as always, thanks so much for watching.